So I think you remember what we have discussed about some visualization part regarding Irish dataset. Now today we will discuss about more details. Hmm. So in this case, now we will start our coding with some specific implementation. And today I will request each one of you, please take a copy and a pen with you, and you have to note some of the special features, because I will be discussing some of the details today which is very critical and which is very important, and you will not find this kind of illustration anywhere. So please make a note. So I will tell you when to take the note. So here the point is, see, today we are going to implement all these things. This is my entire notebook that we are going to do today, but today it is a mathematical part. So in the beginning of this session, I have already explained that whenever we are learning machine learning mechanism, it means we have to deal with lots of mathematics. So now today we will explain what are these mathematics are all about. So let's start from the beginning. So what is this pandas is all about? What is this NumPy is all about? I have already created one video tutorial and I have discussed in my first training session about these two libraries. But today I will start from this matplotlib. So if you see this one, it is written that, so whenever it is written that import matplotlib dot pyplot as plt, first you have to understand what is this all about. Then we will discuss about Seaborn library, and then we will discuss about what is the exact meaning of %matplotlib inline. So let's discuss this three libraries, about these three libraries first. So whenever I'm talking about matplotlib.plt, it is a collection of command style function. Command style function means which makes matplotlib works like a MATLAB. We know that we have a software which is known as MATLAB. So here, using matplotlib as PLT signifies we are going to use some functions which is known as style functions, command style functions, which makes this one work like a MATLAB. So each pyplot that I am talking about, this pyplot thing in case of MATLAB function makes some changes to a specific figure. Means this pyplot is responsible for creating a figure, creating a plotting area in the figure. It plots some lines or plotting area, or it is responsible for decorating the graph that you are going to plot. Also, it is responsible for creating the labels in the graph. Label means, say if I have two lines in the graph, say in the label it will be written as red means this one, class 1, and blue means class 2. So this kind of notation is known as label. So for each and everything, labeling, plotting area, creating figure, this pyplot is responsible for everything. So in matplotlib pyplot, we have various states which are preserved across the function call. So you can think this one as a repository which holds different kinds of function calls, so that it could keep track of the things like which is your current figure, which figure you are going to plot, your plotting area, each and everything will be depicted here. Now I have given a very simple example over here. Here I have used only the library function matplotlib pyplot as plt, and we know that this plt is an alias. Instead of writing matplotlib.pyplot each and every time in my programming, it is better to write plt. So in this case, using this PLT, I have called one function which is a plot function. In this plot function, I have mentioned 1, 2, 3, 4 some numbers. But remember one thing, these numbers are within square bracket. Means these numbers are known as list data type. I was explaining in the previous class. And also I have explained Y label. Y label means according to the along the Y axis it will be written as some numbers. And then I have used another function show. So you have to remember one thing while plotting any graph. So PyPlot has everything. What we have to do in simple words, we have to create one alias of this matplotlib.pyplot, and using this alias we have three specific functions: plot, ylabel and show. And also if you want to write something along the x-axis, you can also include one line plt.xlabel, and then you can write this label. So if you execute this code, then you will be able to find the specific output like this. This is the output. So now here we have some more points. See, you have to take care of these points. What is that? So this is not the only way by you can represent your data set. So we have so many mechanisms by which you can plot your data set. For an example, there is one beautiful library which is known as NumPy, and NP is the alias of that library. Now here see, I have only used this NumPy library. And using this NumPy library, I have created one sine and cos plot. How? So using this alias NP, what I did, I have written one function name which is known as line space. So now first we have to understand that what is the meaning of this line space. See, this line space is a function which returns evenly spread numbers over a specified interval. See, but don't get confused. This is the starting interval and this is the ending interval. See, in this case you have 0 to 10, and this 100 means in along this axis you have no control. So you have to understand what is this 100. So regarding line space, just keep a note. First two arguments are starting and ending argument. But what is this last argument signifies, I will explain. But before that, I'm going to explain that you can also plot some graph using NumPy library also. So in that case, you have to use one line space function, and then you can plot the figure. So for plotting the figure, you will be able to understand that you are using plot function. But see here, this plot function is called with the help of PLT. What is this PLT? This PLT is the alias for matplotlib pyplot. So here you have to understand, whenever you want to visualize a proper representation or plot, you have to use pyplot or alias of the matplotlib.pyplot. So though in this case I haven't mentioned the library of matplotlib pyplot, then also we are using this PLT alias. So from here there is one conclusion. So this thing you have to note. So the entire notebook in which I am working today, it is known as one session. This entire thing is known as one session, or you can say that it is known as one kernel. So the rule of matplotlib pyplot is it needs to be called only once in the entire session. So for a single session, if you call it only once, then you can use in any section of this notepad. See, here I haven't imported it, but I can use the alias of matplotlib pyplot. So this thing you have to note. So this is the most important thing that you have to understand. Next part is Seaborn. So again, Seaborn is a library for making again graphs in Python. But here the most important point is this Seaborn library is built on the top of this matplotlib. So this is the base on which the Seaborn library is made, and it is closely integrated with Pandas data structure. So without this one, it is not possible to use Seaborn. And what Seaborn will do? Seaborn helps you to explore or to understand the data. Okay, so we are talking about these libraries, and these libraries are responsible for plotting something. And why we need to plot? Because so that we could understand our given data frame. So this is the main purpose. Now the most important thing is this one, %matplotlib inline. So what is the meaning of this %matplotlib inline? So after running this line or this command, then what will happen? It will create a plot that enables a PNG image in the resulting graphics. So whichever graphics you will be able to visualize over here, they are the PNG kind of image. So this PNG kind of image can only be generated if you have this kind of command in your code. So here today there is only one conclusion from my side, that is, whichever libraries we are using, why we are using this? Because we want to see some graphical representation. So the masterpiece, the master library for this graphical representation is matplotlib, and you have to import this one. But importing matplotlib will not work. So we need pyplot also. So this pyplot is responsible for creating the graph, decorating it, setting the label. So we need this one. So we will not be able to write this entire thing because it's a very long thing. So we will prefer to use alias. And also, whenever we are defining it, we also need something by which our graph can be represented in terms of PNG format. So then after writing this line, it is mandatory to write this line also. Then only the PNG format will be displayed. But we need some extraordinary modern graphics also. So at this point of time, we need Seaborn library functions. I will show it to you. But you have to remember this Seaborn is built upon this library function. So all of the library functions you have to include whenever you are trying to draw some specific plot. So include each and everything, and then just click on run. Then each and every library function is now in your working space. And once they have included, no need to use them repeatedly, because this thing, once you have written it for a particular session, it will be there throughout this session. So this is the basic conclusion that you have to keep in mind. But what we are going today? See here, again our intention is to read the CSV file where we have our Irish dataset, and then we have to analyze it. So in the previous class I have explained that how to read a particular file. So once I write this line pd.read_csv, then my data set or data frame will be included and it will be stored in the data file in this variable. But what is this pd? So we know that pd is an alias of the pandas library. So this is the pandas library and this pd is the alias of the pandas library. So up to this portion it is done. But today we will learn some new concepts. This one, data.types. So what is this function is all about? So whenever we execute this line data.types, then it is giving us some strange output. So we have to decode the meaning of this outcome. Then only we can understand what is the meaning of D type. So basically whenever I am talking about D type, it signifies the data type object. Or you can say that it is an instance of numpy.dtype class. So now we have to talk in more details. Say, I have already explained that Python is an object-oriented programming. So whenever I am talking about object-oriented programming, we know that we have the concept of class and we have the concept of an object. And we know that how to define an object. Always object will be defined in terms of class. Means I can say that the data type of an object is a class. Means whenever I write int I, means I is the variable and int is the data type. So here also for object is the variable, class is the data type of an object. So it's a very basic concept of object oriented programming. So this situation is known as object is an instance of a class, or you can say object is a variable of type class. So this is the concept. So whenever I am talking about D type, so D type is an object, but since it is an object, there should be a class before it because it will be an object of type some specific class. So the class name is numpy.dtype. So this is the class name whose instance is your D type. So basically this D type describes the byte in the fixed size memory block corresponding to a particular array item. Means in one word it describes type of the data we are dealing with and also the size of the data. Say if I am dealing with integer, then what is the size of the integer? If I am dealing with float, then what is the size of the float? So this two concepts can be depicted by this D type. So now this is my code. So after executing this D type on the variable data, which is holding our actual CSV file, so it is showing this one. See, it is showing what? It is showing the data type of each and every column. So sepal.length is my first column and this is the data type. This is the second column and this is the data type. So it is defining data type of each and every column that is present in my data set. And the last column is variety, where we have Setosa versicolor virginica. This kind of names, species name, and the last column is of type object. Let me show you the data. See, this last column, variety column, the data type of this variety column is object. And the rest of the column that we have, sepal length, sepal width, petal length and petal width, they are having floating point values. So that's why it is showing that float 64. So this is the floating point data type which is represented in terms of Python. So this is the concept of D types in Python. But we have another function which is written over here. It is very important and one of the most significant function that we have to analyze to understand our data set. Please make a note over here. So what I have written over here, data.describe. Definitely the function name is describe. And here I have written something like include is equal to all. Now we have to understand this data, this function. So here the point is, whenever we write This is the main syntax where we write data frame dot describe, and then I have written that include equal to all. So for us, data frame means the variable which is holding our data set. So it is data for our case. And describe function, it is a predefined function. The name will be same and this part will be also same. Now what is the meaning of this function? So basically first I will tell you why we need this function. This function is used to get a summary of all the columns. Please make the note. So this describe function works on the columns of the data frames. And now the question is why I have written this one? Because in the internet you will find the syntax as data.describe. That's it. You will never find this kind of syntax. So now we have to understand why I have written this one. So this point, you have to make a note about this point. So whenever in your data frame, you have mixed column types. So what do you mean by mixed column types? Mixed column type means, see, while using dtype, I have found that some of the columns are of type float and there is one column which is having values of type object. So they are mixed column types. Different data types exist in my data file. So as a result, what we will do, because here you have to remember one point. So this thing I will write for a particular data frame whenever we have mixed column types. And I will tell you one point, the default behavior means where this describe function will work. Whenever you write describe function like this, then it will work on columns that will have only the numeric value. So here my point is, if your data frame is having column with only numeric value, integer or float, then you can use this kind of syntax. However, for mixed data types, you have to use this syntax for describe. And also you have to remember one point, this describe function works on individual columns. And here my point is, whenever we are dealing with real life data, it is natural that each and every column will have mixed data type. It is not possible that each and every column will have same data type. So this syntax is very, very significant. So this thing you have to remember all the time. So now if you see, after writing this syntax, this is my statistical analysis. So we will find that, see, we have 5 columns: sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width and variety. So these are the statistics that we can expect from the describe function, that is the count. Count means how many values are there in each and every column. So we know that we have total 150 value, means total 150 rows in my data set. So see, here it is showing that 150. But why it is 150.000? Because it is in float 64 data type. So that's why it is showing this one. And for object it is showing 150 for variety column. And these are the NaN values we have. So I will talk to you about the NaN values, no issues. And then it is also showing mean. Mean of what? Mean value of individual column. Standard deviation of individual column. Mean value of individual column and IQR, interquartile range, that I have already explained in details in video lecture 3 in my first lecture. All these statistics are shown, but what you have to keep in mind, all these statistics are shown for individual columns. So column wise analysis or statistics it is showing. So this is the most important thing you have to understand. But I have some more discussion about this function. So now just make a note over here. So see, I have also written this syntax also, data.describe, and I have also written this syntax also in order to conclude my discussion, that is, whenever I want to deal with mixed data type, mixed column data type, then I am writing this. But try to understand, whenever I am writing data.describe without this portion, then what it is showing? It is showing the statistics of float 64 data types only, because all those columns are having same data type. That's why it is working only on these 4 columns and it is excluding the variety column. So this is the basic difference between these two syntax. But this is not all. So we have some hidden discussions over this describe functions that is not included anywhere. Now pay attention to this. So you may ask me one question, that is, whenever I am talking about any function, then the function may have some argument. So here the describe function is written with no argument. Here the question is why. So why shouldn't I mention any of the argument over here? So is it intentional or by mistake I have done this? So now we have to understand describe function in more details. So basically, in case of Python, whenever you go to the Python specification, you will find that the describe function, the basic syntax of the describe function will be like this. Data frame, then the describe function, and then you will have 3 arguments over here. So what is this data frame? The variable name in which we have our data file or data frame, and then the function name is describe, and then what are these arguments? The first argument is known as percentile, which is written as percentile is equal to none, and the second argument is known as include, which is also written as include equal to none, and the third argument, which is written as exclude, which is also mentioned as none. So now try to understand the first point that you have to remember. In the Python, in the basic syntax of this describe function, it is mentioned that all these 3 arguments are optional. It is mentioned. So that's why I may include them or I can exclude them. So this is the first reason you have to remember. So whenever you are dealing with any function, you go and check the Python specification about this function, and then you will find some specific reasoning about the arguments. So if the arguments are mentioned as optional, then you can exclude them. If not, then which are the mandatory arguments you have, then you have to include them. So this is the first point. So since all of the arguments are optional, so I have excluded them. But we have to understand, because for other dataset also I may have to use some of the arguments. So we have to understand these arguments. So first, what is the meaning of this argument, which is percentile? So it is an optional parameter, which is a list like data type. So it is a data type which is of type list, and it will contain the list of numbers, and these numbers will be between 0 and 1. Now what are the default values? So for this parameter, the default values are 0.25, 0.5 and 0.75, which returns the 25th and 50th and 75th percentile. So now what is the meaning of 25th, 50th and 75th percentile? So in one word, this percentile parameter represents some values between 0 and 1, which is a list like representation, and they have these three values as default. And see, whenever you execute the code, you will find this one, 25%, 50% and 75%. So these three values are due to the first argument or first parameter that is present inside the describe function. So these are the values coming from the first parameter. Now come to the second parameter, include. It is also an optional parameter that includes the list of data types while describing the data frame, and its default value is none. So basically it is all about defining the data types of the data frame. And what is this exclude? It is also an optional parameter, and this exclude also takes default value as none, and it is the list of data type while describing the data frame. So basically these two things are same. So in one word, what this describe function will return? This describe function will return the statistical summary of the series and the data frame. So try to understand. In the very first video lecture, I have mentioned all of the data types. We have list data types, we have tuple data types, we have data frames, we have series. So everything I have explained. So this describe function works on, or it returns the statistical summary of data frames or series types. So this thing you have to remember. And what kind of statistical summary it is showing? So it is given over here. All the statistical parameters, mean, median and the IQR analysis are given over here using this describe function. But the interview, the most significant question comes, the difference between this one and the difference between this one. I think it is clear. If you see the outcome, then it will be clear. So it is working on columns which are of type mixed data type, and it is working on the columns which are having the same kind of data types. So this is the basic difference between these two functions. Right? So this is all about statistical summary. So you can keep any data from the UCI machine learning, and you can go and check. And also I will tell you one point. I think it is clear now. Before using describe function, it is mandatory to use D types, because this D types will return the data types of your individual column. And by visualizing this, you can understand which kind of describe function you have to use, this one or this one. So that's why D types comes before this describe function. So this is the very basic concept. Now we have some more discussions about this data analysis. It's a data visualization part, which is very, very important. So see, I have written some of the specific functions, and see first this one. I have written that data dot duplicated function dot sum. So it is clear that Here I'm just going to find how many duplicate values we have in our dataset. So if I'm going to execute this line, it is showing that I have one duplicate value. But see, then my question is which one? But there will be one question in your interview. Duplicate function returns what? The column duplication or the row duplication? So it is very clear, it is showing the entire row which is duplicated or which is redundant in your data frame. So I can visualize it also. So for visualizing purpose, what I will do, I will just call the data.duplicate function within the square bracket, and we will write the variable name in which we have the dataset. So try to understand and make a note. Data.duplicate.sum. This is the function which is used to see how many duplicate values you have in your data frame. But if you want to see the exact row which is the redundant value in your data frame, so then you have to write this portion within a square bracket, and then outside the square bracket you have to write the variable name in which you have your data file. Then if you execute this one, so it will show you the row, this one. So this is the duplicate row. Now I have one beautiful and one very, very significant concept over here. The major mistake that people will do over here, what is the mistake that in general data scientist will do? Layman data scientist, not the professional one. So our intention is, whenever we have the duplicate value identified, so find out that row. It is 142 number of a row. Go to the data set, find out 142 number row and just delete it. Because duplication means it is redundant. I had the same value before that. Now this is the greatest mistake. So whenever you have the duplicate value in your data set, you have identified, fine. Don't go and delete it. Do not do this step. But the reason is why. So duplicate value is not good. So we should delete it. So why we are not deleting it? Because now this is the biggest concept you have to understand. So whenever I have started this discussion, I have mentioned that IRIS dataset will have 3 kinds of classes. And each and every class will have 50 samples each. 50 Setosa, 50 versicolor and 50 virginica. So now at this point of time, if you delete any one of the duplicate value, so any particular species will become 49. So this is the point from where it will start creating data imbalance. So why I have selected IRIS dataset, why people prefer to use IRIS dataset? Because this because the classes are balanced, means we have equal number of samples. But if you keep on identifying redundant values and keep on deleting it, then as a result the values will alter. So as a result the imbalance will appear. And whenever you have imbalanced data set, then it needs additional data processing. So we have so many other mechanisms to deal with data set which is having some specific imbalance situation. So here my point is, in order to avoid data imbalance, which is very, very difficult thing to handle. In general, we will find it into the medical data set, which will hamper our machine learning algorithm accuracy at the end. So whenever duplicate values are identified, no issues, check them and do not perform anything. This is for your data analysis purpose. You just note it down. In my data set, I have this kind of duplicate value. And here I am not taking any action. And also I will tell you one point why I am not taking any action. There is one more reason. It's a common sense. That is, I have total 150 values in my data set. So my data set is large. So we have only one duplicate value. So it's a very less margin. So in that case, when we have very less number of redundant values in our data set, so it is better to avoid deletion of this row. So this is another reason. Okay, so this is how you can identify the duplicate value number, how many values are there, and this is how you can identify the row. But what to do with this value? Here my suggestion is, do not tamper the value of the original data set. Keep it as it is. So now there is one question, that is there exist any missing value in my data set? Now we will talk about the missing value. And see, for checking missing value, I have written some specific lines of code. So I have used one function here which is known as isNull. Now we have to carefully understand this function in details, because Irish do not have missing values in any of the column. It is prominent, but whenever we deal with any other real life data, it may have missing value. So it is clear that if I write this line of code, then it will show whether there exists a missing value or not. But we have to know some more details about this function. So what is this? So let me write the function. So whenever you go to the Python specification, you will find that the general syntax is dataframe.isNull. So this is the basic syntax. So for our case, it is data.isNull. Now it is responsible for detecting the missing value. So it is clear. But what it will return exactly? What data type it will return? This is the question, because each and every function, whenever I write any function, there will be some return type of that function. So what data type it is returning? So the answer is, it is returning Boolean return type, and which indicates if the values, means here why it is Boolean data type. Boolean data type means it will have only two values, true or false. So it specifically indicates NA value. Now there is one point, NA value or NaN value. So what is the meaning of this value? So here my point is, so what do you mean by missing value? We have to understand. See, whenever in our data set, say we have 2, 3 or 4 column, then what do you mean by missing value? Say I have one situation that we have some values over here like this, and this place is vacant in my original data set, and now we have some values over here. Now if you apply this isNull function on this column, you will not be able to identify the missing value. Now your question is why? Because we have the missing value. Why it is not identifying? So this is the biggest trick that you have to understand. The problem of this function is, whenever I am dealing with empty string like this, it will not be able to identify empty string in your data set as missing value. So here the point is, just note this point. Whenever you have your raw data set with empty string in a particular column, then you just write externally NaN value or NA value. Just type NaN or NA over here. Do not leave this place as vacant. So if you do this one, then isNull will not identify the missing values. So this is the biggest point you have to remember. So make a note, empty strings cannot be identified as missing value by this isNull function. So this point you have to remember. So this is known as additional processing. So always whenever we deal with the raw file, if you find any empty string, we will write nan over here so that we could deal with isNull function, right? So this is the most important thing that you have to remember. Actually, we can solve this problem. So at this point of time, we have to do some additional setting. So I'm not going into that details. So this is the concept. But what it returns. So here my point is, whenever I am dealing with this isNull function, it returns mask of Boolean values. Mask of Boolean values for each element in the data frame that indicates whether an element is an NA value or not. NA value means not applicable value or not. So what is the return type of isNull? Just write it down, mask of Boolean values. Why it is known as mask of Boolean values? Because it operates on each element in the data frame. It works on each element in the data frame. It keep on searching whether there exists in NA value or not applicable value or not. So that's why the return type is mask of Boolean values. So make a note. It is not just a Boolean value. So if I tell you that isNull function returns Boolean data type, so it does not signify anything, because whenever I am talking about a function at this point of time, you have to ask yourself how my function is working. Whether my function is working on the group of values as a whole, means it is picking a particular column as a chunk and working on it, or it is taking one value each and every time from a column and checking. It is picking this value and checking whether it is NA or not. Then again it is picking the next value and then checking it is NA or not. So in this case we have this situation, right? Each time it is dealing with one column and it is taking individual value from the column and checking whether it is null or not. Not null means whether it is a not applicable value, NA value or not, right? So this situation is known as masking. So that's why, since this function works on individual values or each data elements in the data frame, so that's why it is known as mask of Boolean values. So this is the very basic concept. Now I will tell you one very mathematical statistics, and this is the most important statistics that we have to understand. So to understand this statistics, we have to understand whole lots of mathematics and statistics, but I will explain it in a simple term. I will try to explain it in a simple term. So first, we will try to find out the skew, the data skew. Now, what is this skew? So whenever I execute this line, see, it is showing some value per column basis. So sepal length, it is showing some value. For sepal width, it is showing another value, and see, these values are positive or they are negative also. Maybe positive, maybe negative. So first we have to understand what is this skew concept. So understanding skew is very important. So let me explain the basic concept of skew first. See, if you ask me what is this skew function, so I will tell you that this skew function is responsible for computing skewness of the data present in a given axis of the data frame object. So now how we can define this skewness? So first I will tell you one point which is very important. Whenever you are dealing with Python and its functions, first be very sure about on which location your function will work, because our data set is 2D. We have row and we have columns. So my first point is this skewness factor is computed for each row or each column of the data frame, right? So skewness can be computed on row as well as it can be computed as columns, on columns. So in our case, since my features are defined in the columns, so I prefer to apply this skew function on each and every column. So this is my first justification. Now let's talk about the values. Mathematically I'm explaining. So now if you find the skewness value between minus 0.5 and 0.5, then you can say that your data are fairly symmetrical. So what is the meaning of symmetrical? I'm just explaining. So this is the first conclusion. If you find the value between this and this, then you can say that your data is fairly symmetrical. Then if you find the skewness value is between minus 1 and minus 0.5, or say between 0.5 and 1, anything. So you can say that your data set is moderately skewed. And the third case is if your skewness is less than minus 1 or greater than plus 1, then the data is highly skewed. So these are the three cases that you have to keep in mind. And also I have written here and. So please make a note over here. That is, this is your case number 1, this is your case number 2, and this is your case number 3. So the skewness is between this one and this one. This one and this one. Then these are the conclusions that we are getting. Now, if you ask me one question, that what do you mean by skewness? That means how can I define the concept of skewness? So now I will tell you very simple mathematical concept so that it could be clear to you. See, I haven't discussed anything about skewness, but see, I have discussed about mean, median, this kind of factors, right? Statistical analysis. And the first point that you have to note, whenever I am talking about this mean, median, the statistical analysis, they are related with this factor skewness. Now I will show you how they are related with this factor skewness. So before skewness, I expect that you could find out the statistical summary of your data set, right? So now, first I will tell you one point. I'm just drawing a curve. Say I'm drawing a curve like this. And say this is the mode value, and this is the, say, median value, and say this is the mean value. Say this is a simple curve. So this curve, actually the drawing is not correct. Why? Because whenever we have this kind of situation means what? Here you can see that the mean is greater. See, the mean value is greater than the mode value. The mode value is here in this axis, the mean value is here in this axis. And the median value is greater than the mode value. This is the mode value and this is the median value. So whenever you have this kind of situation where mean is greater than mode and median is greater than mean, so here at this point of time it is known as right skewed. So what do you mean by right skewed? So say I have this diagram, I have drawn one diagram like this. Then I have plotted the value of mode, median and mean, say. And by the while doing statistical analysis, one person can easily identify, okay, if this is the situation, then this diagram is not correct. Now my question is why? see, whenever you have the situation where mean is greater than mode, mean is greater than mode, and median is greater than mode, and mean is greater than median. See, these three cases are happening over here, right? Check. Mean is greater than mode, median is greater than mode, and mean is greater than median, right? You can see these values in the x-axis, then you can identify. So whenever this three condition holds, then the plot should be right skewed. So now what is the meaning of right skewed? So we have basically three kinds of drawing. So if you have your plot like this, so we have a tail at the right hand side, right? So this is known as your right skewed diagram. And whenever you have this kind of diagram, this is known as symmetric distribution. And whenever you have this kind of diagram, it is known as left skewed, right? So now what is the value of mean, median and mode at this point of time? So for the right skewed, it will be like this. So this is the median, this is the mode, and this is the mean in actual scenario. And whenever we have symmetric distribution, this is the position where mean, median and mode exist. And for left skewed one, so this is the mean, this is the median, and this is the mode. So now before defining anything, before defining the concept of skew, first you have to remember these three diagrams, right? Left skewed, right skewed and symmetric. Then you have to understand one point. If mean, median and mode do exist in this position, it is the symmetric concept. But here, apart from mathematics, there will be a very simple question as a data scientist. What is that question? So what is the significance? Why we are drawing this kind of skew diagram? See, okay, we know the concept of mathematics and everything, but why we need this? See, here there is one concept, that is we always trying to find out this symmetric kind of distribution. This symmetric kind of distribution is known as normal distribution. So basically in a normal distribution, if this kind of symmetry appears, meaning that there are as many data values we have in the left side of the median as on the right side also. So we have same kind of distribution of the data points. So always we go for this kind of symmetric distribution. But real life scenario, what will happen? We always not find this kind of symmetric distribution. We may find left skewed or we may find right skewed kind of distribution. So in one word, if you ask me, that is, what is this skew function is all about? So the skew function will tell you how your data points are distributed. Okay, so how many data points are there in the left side of your median and how many data points are there in the right side of your median, so that you could understand how your data points are distributed. So this data distribution is one of the very crucial concept in data analysis, because if your data is distributed properly, means normal distribution if you have, then we can expect that whichever machine learning algorithm we will use, it will give us better accuracy, right? But if your data point is not evenly distributed, then it may happen that whichever advanced algorithm we may use, the accuracy may hamper. So that's why we are always concerned about the skewness factor. So basically skewness is a measure of asymmetry of a distribution. So in a normal distribution, the mean divides the curve symmetrically into two equal parts at the median, and the value of the skewness is at this point of time 0. So for normal distribution, the value of the skewness is 0. And when a distribution of asymmetrical tail of a distribution is skew on any particular one side or left or right, then it is your left skewed or right skewed. That is, when the value of the skewness is negative, then the tail of the distribution is longer towards the left hand side. So whenever you find the value of the skewness is negative, then straight away you can conclude that the tail of the distribution is longer towards the left hand side, this case. And whenever the value of the skewness is positive, then the tail of the distribution is longer toward the right hand side. So please make a note. So whenever the outcome of your skewness is 0, then it means your data is normally distributed. So you have equal number of points on the left hand side and right hand side of the median. However, if for negative value it is a left skewed one, and for the positive value you have right skewed one. So now check my coding. Triple dot length is a positive value. It means what kind of distribution we have for this column. Positive. So from this you can conclude your data set is not normally distributed, all the columns. Yes. Right? So 0 means exact 0, right? When the value of the skewness is exactly 0, then you can say that it's normally distributed, right? So this is the conclusion that we can perform from skewness. See, after this analysis, what is your intention? After your analysis, say you want to classify your data set, right? So for classification, you may find many machine learning algorithms. Type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. Now here, which machine learning algorithm will work better? It depends on quality of the algorithm. But there is one more factor, the data distribution pattern. I will tell you one example. Say you are dealing with medical data and the data is not normally distributed. So they are skewed data, left skewed or right skewed. So at this point of time, my conclusion is, say I am using one advanced algorithm, more advanced algorithm. Then only you can find that your accuracy is not going beyond 80%. You are trying hard, you are cleaning your data hard, but still your accuracy is not coming beyond 80%. So at this point of time, so that is your end, your algorithm converges. So it is not possible to go beyond that because your data statistics or data summary is not supporting it, right? So this is the one thing that you can define. So this is the concept. So it doesn't imply that whenever you are, so always it keeps in our mind that if I am using a very advanced machine learning algorithm, then my accuracy will be above 90%. Always people will think that, or above 95%. So it depends on the data, depends on the statistics of the data. So it may happen that I am working on medical data, and it may happen you are working on solar irradiance data and you are getting 98% accuracy. Using the same algorithm, I am getting 85% accuracy. It does not imply that I am not writing the code correctly. So where is the fault? Here the fault in my data distribution. So this is the point you have to remember. So that's why data analysis is very, very important. See, correcting data distribution is not possible, right? It is your basic feature. So the data you have acquired from the repository, and it is the pattern of the data, you cannot change it. But yes, there is a way by which we can improve the accuracy of the model, or we can try to improve the accuracy of the model. Yes, we have many mechanisms, and this is the point from where we will start our research. So what will happen? So this thing I want to elaborate, very good question, that is, see, we know that, always we know that the machine learning is used for research purpose. Okay, but where is the point? Because everybody can write the code. So from where we should start the research? So whenever you are acquiring the data, then you will analyze the data and you will get some data analysis at this point of time. So after getting the data analysis, if your data is perfect, then there is no point of using machine learning algorithm to perform some task. So this kind of data is for no use. So always researcher will pick some data. After analyzing those data, we will find lots of problem. Then we will try to apply machine learning algorithm, and then we will try to compute the accuracy. Then after getting a very low accuracy, we will come back to this algorithm, and then we will try to find out some new strategies on the top of this machine learning algorithm, so that each time my accuracy keeps on increasing. So at a certain point of time, what will happen, though I am trying so many mechanisms, then also my accuracy is fixed at certain point of time. So at this point of time, I will conclude it is not possible to increase the accuracy of this machine learning algorithm on this data set beyond 90%. So this is the concept. So I have my IEEE publication in 2017, where I have proven that on different medical data sets, I have proven that the accuracy of this machine learning algorithm is totally dependent on the behavior of the data set. So I have tried so many advanced algorithms and I have proved it. So basically, how your machine learning algorithm will perform, it is not dependent on the what algorithm you are using. It is totally dependent on the what data you are using and what is the behavior of your data set. So this is the most important point that you have to remember. See, I'm giving you one example. So right now I'm doing my research on satellite image. So what will happen? So why we need satellite image research? Because there are some portion where physically we are not be able to go there. So there will be some problem over here, or there will be some dangerous animal that do exist in that place. So what we will do, we will consider the satellite image. So after taking the satellite image, what will happen, the first difficulty is whatever data we have gathered, whenever we start analyzing the data, the first difficulty is the cloud. So if we have cloud over the data, then the distribution of the data will be not understood. Then the pattern of the data will be not be understood. So then we have to find out some mechanism by which we can alleviate the effect of cloud. Then again, if we focus on that data set, then the next problem is the resolution of the image. If the resolution of the image is not good, then the analysis will not be good. Again, we have to find out some mechanism so that we could improve the resolution. So this is the problem, real life problem, which is associated with your data. So basically taking the data from the source and applying machine learning algorithm, in between you have so many steps. And what steps you have to apply when there is no significant rule. It is a trial and error method. Keep on trying and try to solve the problem as much as you can. So this is the problem. So I think it is clear now. So what is the concept of this machine learning and all this thing? See, whenever you are working on this data frame, see, we are not actually modifying our data set, right? Try to understand. This is my source. I am just analyzing it. So it is my intention that whichever changes I am doing or whichever statistical analysis I am making on this data set, it does not imply that I am changing this one. No, it will be remain as it is. You cannot change the source. Don't do that. Because if you change the source, then how could you analyze? So I'm giving you one example. Try to understand. Say you are writing one programming. This is a very popular programming on in C, reverse a number. Say this is your original number. and you want an output that will reverse your number. So in between, you have to perform so many calculations. But one thing you have to keep in mind, you always try that whichever calculation you are performing, it should not affect your original data. Otherwise, you will not be able to compare, right? So in this case also, so this is our raw data. You shouldn't hamper your raw data. So in between, whatever changes you are making, you want to analyze this thing. So by the end of your analysis, if this thing changes, then how could you compare? So this is the point that you have to remember. It will never be reflected in your data set because we are not going to change the data set. But while applying machine learning algorithm, we have to tamper this data set. We have to divide this data set into two parts. So at that point of time, what I will do, I will keep this raw file as it is. I will create one new file and then I will divide this file. So whatever modifications I'm going to make on my data file, it will be a new file. My original file will be remain as it is so that I could compare. So base file should not be changed. People might think that data analysis and data science is everything same. No, here the problem is data science is the superset. Means data science includes everything. You should have a knowledge of statistics, you should have a knowledge of analytics, you should have a knowledge of machine learning, everything. Data science includes everything. But data analytics means you will be concerned only about some of the analysis or some of the analytical feature onto your data set. This is your data analytics. So in one word, I can say that data science is the superset and data analytics is one part of this data science, or you can say the subset of this data science. So data science is a huge thing. So whatever we are doing right now, it is not actually a data science, it is a data analytics that we are doing. A very small part. And now I think everyone can explain that why we need this thing, because each and every place you will find that take the data, apply the machine learning algorithm. See, it is of no use. If I am giving you a processed data, already processed data and simple data, applying machine learning algorithm is writing 2 or 3 lines of code. But the main part lies in understanding the data. That is the point you have to remember. See, the part of data integrity and data manipulation, definitely it is a part of data science, right? But here there is one very strange behavior on data. I cannot give you any specific name of an algorithm by which you can use, which algorithm you can use on your data set and you can get the better integrity. So here my point is, it depends on the data set which kind of activity you have to use. I'm giving you one example. Say today we have talked about missing value, right? So this is the one part where each and every real life data will have their missing values. Say we have one data X and we have some missing value identified. So the first question is how to rectify this one, means how you can solve this problem. So there is one algorithm which is known as k nearest neighbor algorithm. By using this k nearest neighbor algorithm, definitely I will talk about this algorithm, I can rectify this problem. But what will happen then at this point of time, if you conclude that okay, k nearest neighbor is the algorithm by which we can solve the problem of missing values. Very good. So I will take another data set, a new data set y. If there exists missing value, so I will apply k nearest neighbor. So at this point of time, you will fail, because to track this problem, we have other mechanisms too, like imputation mechanism. We have other algorithms also. So which algorithm we have to apply to solve this problem of missing value on which data set, it is not well defined. You have to try each and every algorithm for a specific problem on a specific data set. Then you have to find out the accuracy and then you have to conclude something. So I can give you some basic mechanism, but I can assure you that those mechanisms are not standard. In machine learning, there is nothing as standard algorithm or standard mechanism to achieve data integrity or proper data processing. So you have to learn all the mechanisms and you have to apply them on your data set. Then only it can be understood. But you will never find any specific algorithm by which I can give you one answer that this is the algorithm, do apply this algorithm on your data set and you will get the integrity. Never. So that's why it is known as, I will give you one term today. So that's why it comes under soft computing. So we have two concepts, soft computing and hard computing. Hard computing means to perform something, you have a fixed formula or fixed algorithm. But in case of soft computing, there is no such situation like this is the mechanism, follow it, you will get the answer. No. So it will vary depending on the situation. So actually we are dealing with soft computing mechanisms. So on the basis of that intention, we will decide either we will perform soft computing or hard computing. Say I have one data set of retailer shop, right? We have details data set of retailer shop. So I only want to see today's profit. So how could I calculate? So I will use one static formula in Excel. I will find out what is my monthly profit or yearly profit. So it is a part of hard computing. But if I want to analyze it, that what is my previous profit, what is my current profit, and what will be my future profit if I go on like this. So at this point of time, we need one soft computing mechanism, and that will be one machine learning algorithm. And it may be neural network, it may be deep learning neural network, or it may be simple genetic algorithm for optimization. Right? So it depends on the situation. It is not at all related with your data set. Please don't confuse with this situation. Your data set is not related with what you are going to do. Your data set is a static thing. What you are going to perform on this, that thing will decide which computation you should take, right? Any kind of data set, there is one beautiful source. You go there, Kaggle. You go there and you will find every kind of data set over here. This is another repository. This is the repository where you can find codes, everything over here. So if you need coronavirus data, so you will find so many data set. You select any one of the data set. Also you will find the code, how to analyze it. So this is the code, this is the data set. Go and download the data set. You can upload your data set, anything you can do. So vaccine myths, large scale fish data set, anything what you need. Any kind of data set, medical data set, cancer data set, anything. So they are actually fetching data from UCI machine learning. So everything is there. So you can go and fetch the data set and you can check the code. Data is there, code is there, some discussions are also there. Go and check this site. It is Kaggle. Make a note. And also you will find data set in UCI machine learning repository also. Coronavirus data set is also there. So go and check. You have so many data sets, data repository. Download the data, start working on data. Do all these kinds of analysis that we are doing. You have one option. If you have very less number of data duplication problem, then do not tamper your data. Keep it as it is. If not, just apply imputation, delete the row. Whichever value appears to be duplicate, just erase it. Then again, there will be one associated problem. Your data file will be imbalanced. Then you have to find out a mechanism by which you have to solve the mechanism of data imbalance. So it's a chain procedure.